The Prodigies of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Series 12. Volume 19, May 18, 1926. Just as the Virgin had to embrace everything and do the acts of all, in order to obtain the longed-for Redeemer and conceive him, in the same way, the one who must obtain this supreme fiat has to embrace all and answer for all. Luisa feels the weight of her responsibility. Jesus reassures her. I was fusing myself in the holy divine will, and after making my round around all created things, in order to impress my I love you, so that my I love you might resound everywhere and over all, to requite my Jesus for his great love, I arrived at that point at which I would be requiting my God for all the love he had in the act of being conceived in the womb of the celestial Mamma. At that moment, my beloved Jesus came out from within my interior and told me, "My daughter, in order to conceive me, eternal Word, my inseparable Mamma was enriched with seas of grace, of light, and of sanctity, by the Supreme Majesty. And she did such and so many acts of virtue, of love, of prayer, of desire, and of ardent sighs, as to surpass all the love, virtues, and acts of all generations, which were needed in order to obtain the longed-for Redeemer. So when I saw in the Sovereign Queen the complete love of all creatures, and all the acts needed to deserve that the Word be conceived, I found in her the requital of the love of all, our glory restored, all the acts of the redeemed ones, and even of those for whom my redemption was to serve as condemnation because of their ingratitude. Then did my love make its final display, and I was conceived. Therefore the right to the name of Mother is natural for her. It is sacred, because by embracing all the acts of the generations and substituting for all, it was as if she delivered them all to new life from her maternal womb. Now you must know that when we do our works, we have to give so much love, light, and grace to the creature who is chosen, and to whom the work is entrusted, that she may be able to give us all the requital and the glory of the work entrusted to her. Our power and wisdom would not deposit themselves in the bank of the creature from the very beginning of a work of ours, as though in the act of going bankrupt. Our work must be safe in the creature, who is called as primary act, and we must collect all the interest and the glory equivalent to our work entrusted to her. And even if our work were later communicated to the other creatures, and because of their ingratitude it ran the risk of failing, this would be more tolerable for us, because the one to whom it was entrusted at the beginning allows us to collect all the interest in place of the failures of the other creatures. This is why we gave her everything, and received everything from her, so that all the capital of redemption might remain intact, and through her our glory might be completed and our love requited. Who is the wise man who from the very beginning would put his capital in a bank that is about to go bankrupt? First he makes sure, and then he entrusts his capital. However, it may happen that later on it fails, but this cannot cause him grave damage, because he has already made up for his capital through the much interest received. If man does so, much more so does God, whose wisdom is incomprehensible. And this was not about just any work, or a small capital, but it was about the great work of redemption, and all the cost of the infinite and incalculable value of the eternal Word. It was a unique work, nor could a new descent of the eternal Word on earth be repeated. Therefore we had to place it in safety in the celestial sovereign lady, And since we entrusted everything to her, even the very life of a god, she, as our trustworthy one, had to answer for all, becoming the guarantor and the one responsible for this divine life entrusted to her, as indeed she did. Now, my daughter, what I did and wanted from my celestial mamma in the great work of redemption, I want to do with you in the great work of the supreme Fiat. The work of the divine Fiat is a work that must embrace everything: creation, redemption, and sanctification. It is the basis of everything. It is the life that flows in everything and encloses everything within itself, because it has no beginning. It is the beginning of all things, and the end, and fulfillment of our works. See then, the capital we want to entrust to you is exuberant. You have not calculated it. But do you know what it is that we entrust to you in the supreme Fiat? We entrust to you, Luisa, the whole creation, all the capital of redemption, and that of sanctification. My will is universal, and in all things it has been the operator. So it is right that what belongs to it be entrusted to you. Would you perhaps want my will without its works? We do not know how to give our life without our works and our goods. When we give everything. And just as by giving the word to the celestial queen, we centralized all his works and his goods in her, in the same way, by giving you our supreme will, reigning and dominating in you, we give you all the works that belong to it. This is why we are giving you so many graces, knowledges, and capacities, so that from the very beginning the supreme Fiat might suffer no failure. And you, placing it in safety, must give it the requital of love and glory of all creation, redemption, and sanctification. Your task is great. It is universal, and must embrace everyone and everything, in such a way that if our will, communicated to the other creatures, should suffer some failure, in you we must find the compensation for the void of others. And as you place it in safety within yourself, and you give us the love, the glory, and all the acts that the other creatures should do for us, our glory shall always be complete, and our love shall collect its just interest. So you too shall be our trustworthy one, the one responsible for the divine will entrusted to you, and its guarantor. Now, while Jesus was saying this, I was taken by such fright. I comprehended all the weight of my responsibility, and fearing strongly that I might put in danger nothing less than all the weight and works of a divine will, I said, "My love, thank you for so much goodness of yours toward me, but I feel that what you want to give me is too much. I feel an infinite weight that crushes me, and my littleness and incapacity have neither strength nor ability. As I fear that I might displease you, and I might be unable to embrace everything, go to some other creature, more capable, so that all this capital of your supreme will may be safer, and you may receive all the interest equivalent to such a great capital." I had never thought of such a great responsibility, but now that you are making me understand it, I feel my strengths fail me, and I fear my weakness. And Jesus, clasping me to himself to relieve me from the fear that crushed me, added, "My daughter, courage! Do not fear. It is your Jesus that wants to give you too much. Am I perhaps not free to give whatever I want? Do you perhaps want to put a limit to my complete work that I want to entrust to you? What would you say if my celestial mamma had wanted to accept me, the eternal Word, but without his goods and without the acts that were needed to be able to conceive me? Would this be true love and true acceptance? Certainly not. So would you want my will without its works and without the acts that befit it? Now, so that you may remove this fright, you must know that everything I have told you, that is, this capital so great, is already in you. After I had you acquire the practice of giving me the requital of the glory and the love of all creation, redemption, and sanctification, making you embrace everything and everyone, and having seen that the equivalent interest was coming to me easily, only then did I want to make known to you, Luisa, with more clarity, the great capital of my will entrusted to you, so that you may know the great good you possess. And as you come to know it, I may sign the deed of the capital entrusted to you, and also make for you the receipt of the interest you give me. If you did not know it, neither the deed of the capital nor the receipt of the interest could be made. Here is, therefore, the necessity to make it known to you. Besides, why do you fear to the point of wanting to send me to another creature? Do you not have a love within you that says, I love you for everyone and for everything, and a motion that repays me for the motion of all, and that in everything you do embraces everyone, to give me the acts, the prayers, the glory, and the reparations of all, as though in one single embrace? If you already do this, why do you fear? At that moment I saw other souls around me. Jesus went to them, and checking them all, he seemed to touch them, to see whether at his touch the motion of his divine life would come out. But nothing came out. Then he came back to me, and taking my hand, he squeezed it tightly. At his touch a light came out of me, and Jesus, all content, told me, this light is the motion of the divine life in you, Luisa. I went to the other creatures, as you saw, but I did not find my motion. How then can I entrust the great capital of my will? This is why I have chosen you, and that is enough. Be attentive, and do not fear. Volume 19, June 15th, 1926. How the Nothing is frightened and trembles under the All. How the Virgin loves her celestial children and performs in heaven her office of mother. Just as knowledge gave life to the fruits of redemption, so it shall give life to the fruits of the divine will. I was feeling all full of defects, especially because of the great repugnance I feel when it comes to writing of the intimate things between myself and our Lord. The weight I feel is so great that I do not know what I would do in order not to do it. And since the obedience of the one who is above me imposes itself, though I would like to oppose myself and tell my reasons for not doing it, I always end up surrendering. So having gone through a similar contrast, I felt full of defects and totally bad. Therefore, as blessed Jesus came, I told him, Jesus, my life, have pity on me. Look at how full of defects I am, and how much badness there is in me. And he, all goodness and tenderness, told me, my daughter, Luisa, do not fear. I am here, watching over you and keeping your soul in custody, so that not even the slightest sin may enter into your soul. And where you or others see defects and badnesses, I find none. Rather, I see that your nothing feels the weight of the all. In fact, the more I elevate you intimately to me, and I make known to you what the all wants to do with your nothing, the more you feel your nothingness, and almost frightened and crushed under the all, you would want escape from manifesting, and even more from writing on paper that which the All wants to make of this nothing of yours. More so since, as much reluctance as you feel, I always win and make you do what I want. This happened also to my celestial mamma, when she was told, "I hail you, Mary, full of grace. You shall conceive the Son of God." On hearing this, she was frightened. She trembled and said, "How can this happen?" But she ended up saying, "Fiat mihi secundum verbum tuum." She felt all the weight of the All over her nothing, and naturally she was frightened. So when I manifest to you what I want to do with you, and your nothing is frightened, I see the fright of the sovereign queen being repeated, and compassionating you, I lift your nothing, I strengthen it, that it may endure sustaining the All. Therefore do not be concerned about this, but rather think of letting the All operate in you. Then after this I was doing my usual acts in the Supreme Volition, embracing everything and everyone, to be able to bring to my Creator the acts of all as one single act. Now while I was doing this, my sweet Jesus came out from within my interior, and embracing everything together with me, he united himself with me, doing what I was doing. Then all love he told me, "My daughter, I love so much the acts done in my will, that I make myself take on the commitment to keep them in custody in the unity of my supreme light, in such a way as to render them inseparable from me and from my own acts. If you knew how jealous I am of these acts, how they glorify me in a holy divine way. It can be said that each of these acts is a new feast that starts in the whole creation and in the whole celestial fatherland. Flowing in my will like ray of light, these acts bring new joys, feasts, and happinesses wherever my will is. These acts are the joys, the feast, and the happiness that the creature forms in the will of her Creator. And do you think it is trivial that the creature can form and bring feast, joy, and happiness to her Creator, and wherever our will reigns? The same happened with my Queen Mamma. As she always operated in the unity of the light of the Supreme Will, all of her acts, her office of Mother, her rights of Queen, remained inseparable from her Creator. So much so that when the divinity unleashes the acts of beatitude to make the whole celestial fatherland happy, it unleashes with them all the acts of the celestial Mamma. So all the saints feel invested, not only with our joys and beatitudes, but also with the maternal love of their mother, with the glory of their Queen, and with all of her acts converted into joys for the whole celestial Jerusalem. Every fiber of her maternal heart loves all the children of the celestial fatherland with love of Mother, and she shares her joys of Mother and her glory of Queen with everyone. So on earth she was mother of love and of sorrow for her children, who cost her so much as the life of her Son God. And by virtue of the unity of the light of the Supreme Will which she possessed, her acts remained inseparable from ours. While in heaven she is mother of love, of joys, and of glory for all of her celestial children. So all the saints have greater love, more glory, and more joys by virtue of their Mother and Sovereign Queen. Therefore I love so much the one who lives in my will, that I lower myself to her, to do what she does together with her, to raise her up to the bosom of the Eternal One, to render her act one with her Creator. After this I remained thinking about the blessed will of God, and many things wandered through my mind, which it is not necessary to put on paper. And my sweet Jesus, coming back, added, "My daughter, the triumph of my will is connected with creation and with redemption. It can be called one single triumph. Since a woman was the cause of the ruin of man, it was a virgin woman who, after 4,000 years, letting my humanity, united to the eternal Word, be born of her, provided the remedy for the ruin of fallen man. Now that the remedy for man is formed, is my will alone to be left without its full completion, while it has its prime act both in creation and redemption? This is why, after 2,000 years more, we have chosen another virgin as the triumph and fulfillment of our will. Forming its kingdom in your soul and making itself known with its knowledge, my will has given you its hand to raise you to living in the unity of its light, so that you may form your life in it, and the divine will may form its life in you. And having formed its dominion in you, it forms the connection through which to communicate its dominion to the other creatures. And just as, in descending into the womb of the Immaculate Virgin, the Word did not remain in it for her alone, but I formed the connection of communication for creatures, and I gave myself to all, and as a remedy for all, the same shall happen with you, Luisa. By having formed its kingdom in you, my supreme volition forms the communications to make itself known to creatures. Everything I have told you about it, the knowledges I have given you, the way and the how of the living in my will, my making known to you how it wants, how it yearns for man to return into its arms, and enter once again into his origin of the eternal will from which he came, are all ways of communication, bonds of love, transmission of light, a breeze to make them breathe the air of my will, and therefore disinfect the air of the human will, and a mighty wind to conquer and uproot the most rebellious wills. Each knowledge I have given you about my will contains a creative power, and everything is in letting these knowledges out, because the power they contain shall know how to breach its way into the hearts, to submit them to its dominion. Did the same perhaps not happen in redemption? As long as I remained with my mamma in the hidden life of Nazareth, everything was silent around me, although this hiddenness of mine, together with the celestial queen, served in an admirable way to form the substance of redemption, and so that I might announce myself as being already present in their midst. But when did its fruits communicate themselves in the midst of the peoples? When I went out in public, made myself known, and spoke to them with the power of my creative word. And as all that I did and said spread and keeps spreading still now in the midst of the peoples, then did the fruits of redemption have their effects, and still do. Indeed, my daughter, if no one had known that I had come upon earth, redemption would have been something dead and without effects for creatures. So knowledge gave life to its fruits. The same shall be for my will. Knowledge shall give life to the fruits of my will. This is why I wanted to renew what I did in redemption, choosing another virgin, remaining hidden with her for 40 years and more, segregating her from everyone, as if in a new Nazareth, to be free with her to tell the whole story, the prodigies, and the goods contained in it, so as to be able to form the life of my will in you, Luisa. And just as I chose Saint Joseph to be together with me and my mamma, as our cooperator, tutor, and vigilant sentry for me and for the Sovereign Queen, in the same way I have placed near you the vigilant assistance of my ministers, as cooperators, tutors, and depositories of the knowledges, goods, and prodigies contained in my will. And since my will wants to establish its kingdom in the midst of peoples, through you I want to deposit this celestial doctrine in my ministers as my new apostles, so that first I may form with them the link of connection with my will, and then they may transmit it into the midst of peoples. If it were not so, or were not to be so, I would not have insisted so much on having you write, nor would I have permitted the daily coming of the priest, but I would have left all my work between me and you. Therefore be attentive and leave me free to do what I want in you. Now who can say how overwhelmed I remained at this speaking of Jesus? I remained mute, and from the depth of my heart I repeated, Fiat, Fiat, Fiat. You have reached the end of the Prodigies of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Volume 19, Part 3. Fiat.